We have this New York Times article from Ben Smith. It's really interesting. He mentions that our media operates like election commissions. When we're trying to figure out who actually won, we go about this in a really weird way. The news outlets just tell us, and we assume they're telling the truth, even though they're just making predictions. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, I mean,
I always assume.
I guess weird isn't what I would use the term.
Well, I always assumed that like the official reporting coming into the news outlets was that they would hear from like the state election board saying, we've confirmed this is the results. That's not the case. They're taking like polling data and they're making phone calls and then saying, here's our projection.
Hey,
like,
who did you vote for? Hey, who did you vote for? Who did you vote for? Is that what they're saying, what they do? Because who's going to tell them Trump? No one's going to say that. Well, we've known that. Well,
they do. Well, they did in 2016, right? They didn't want to. And They do call the election boards, but ultimately it's just like they're not certified results. And so what ends up happening is we had the very famous 2000 moment where Fox News called Florida for George Bush, but then everyone said he didn't. And they were like, wait, what happened? And then Al Gore rescinded his concession. And then it went to the courts and then Bush won.
Okay.
Because the media is telling us who won.
Great.
Instead of us like waiting a week, we created the spectacle where the day of election. Now we're not going to have that. And so
no one trusts the media either anymore.
Yep. So,
that's not going to work anyway.
This story here from the Boston Globe this is actually relatively old story. It's from June, but we're getting new information on a bipartisan group secretly gathering to game out a contested Trump-Biden election. And it wasn't pretty, they say. I can go through all the details, but suffice to say, it's very, very simple. All of the scenarios result in street-level violence, political impasse. The law is essentially helpless. They predicted 4 scenarios, one in which Trump wins, but only with the Electoral College. And in that scenario, Joe Biden would not concede.
Well, and you said this earlier. All of the people that are in this group doing this don't like Trump at all.
Yeah, they're all never Trumpers.
Correct, right?
All of them.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting is actually this this column from Ben Smith over at the New York Times, how the media would get the election story wrong. We may not know the results for days and maybe weeks, so it's time to rethink election night. I don't think there's going to be an election night or even election month. Right now in New York City, they're still trying to count the mail-in ballots from 6 weeks ago, and they don't know who won these primaries.
The mail-in ballots.
Yep.
Sounds like there's something fishy with mail-in ballots.
But take a look at how the column ends, and then we'll talk about what this means in terms of these scenarios. They say, conveniently, a group of former top government officials called the Transition Integrity Project actually gamed 4 possible scenarios, including one that doesn't look that different from 2016. A big popular win for Mr. Biden and a narrow electoral defeat, presumably reached after weeks of counting the votes in Pennsylvania. For their war game, they cast John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, in the role of Mr. Biden. They expected him, when the votes came in, to concede, just as Mrs. Clinton had. The only issue? Yeah, he didn't. Mr. Podesta, playing Biden, shocked the organizers by saying he felt his party wouldn't let him concede. Alleging voter suppression, he persuaded the governors of Wisconsin and Michigan to send pro-Biden electors to the Electoral College, presumably at odds with what the results actually were. In that scenario, California, Oregon, and Washington then threatened to secede from the United States if Mr. Trump took office as planned. The House named Biden president. The Senate and White House stuck with Trump. At that point in the scenario, the nation stopped looking to media outlets for cues and waited to see what the military would do.
Oh.
So here's the scenario I have. What happens when Fox News says Donald Trump has won, and then MSNBC says Joe Biden has won, and the results are insanely different? And then what?
You just said you had it. You go.
What
do you think?
Well, then you end up with this scenario exactly as they said it. The left is going to argue we didn't lose, we won. It's reported in the press. Fox News is fake news. And then Fox is going to report it for Trump. And then the people are going to say MSNBC, CNN, these are fake outlets. You're going to have all the liberals saying there's no way all of these outlets are fake. Right-wing media is lying. Joe Biden and his camp are going to say right-wing media is just they're fascists, trying to support Trump. And you're going to end up with people who actually read the news, who actually know the data, are going to be called right-wing. and it won't matter what you believe or what you don't believe.
I think the military will side with Trump.
I think
so.
I think so, but it's hard to know for sure. We've already had several, former generals come out against him and slam him.
That doesn't mean anything. They're former. Like the military right now. I mean, I personally know people that are fed up with what's happening, saying, I'm sick of the Democrats. I'm sick of what's going on. And I think they'd side with him. They'd side with the president.
We need to see how the election goes, but there's an even worse scenario not listed in any of these games. And that's an election night, in-person polling landslide for Trump that they refuse to call because of mail-in ballots. And then over the course of a few weeks, ballots keep pouring in and it flips for Biden.
550 million votes for Biden. It's like there's only 350 million Americans.
It could be something like Trump gets 64 million and they're like, because of mail-in voting, it would be split between Trump and Biden, but they'll be like 50 million votes cast for Trump and 40 million for Biden. It looks like it should be a landslide, but we still have mail-in ballots, so we're not going to call it tonight. And then every week, Biden gets, 3 or 4 million and Trump gets like 500,000. And then in the span of like 3 or 4 weeks, all of a sudden, Joe Biden is now the winner. And then no matter what happens, Trump's like, where are these ballots coming from? How is this possible? Where did all these votes come from? It won't matter.
Well, they keep printing dollars. Probably they keep printing ballots. Just keep printing ballots. We'll be good.
The crazy thing is that this did happen in 2018, but the Republicans didn't contest it. So there were races. So here, this is an interesting thing. I often talk about how I was wrong in 2018.
Okay.
Maybe I wasn't. Depending on how conspiratorial you want to get.
Go on.
So I thought the Republicans were going to dominate. They controlled every branch of everything, basically. And I was like, considering this insanity that we're seeing in the press and cancel culture, I can't imagine that, the House would flip, this blue wave would really hit. Conservatives basically won for the most part in the initial reporting. And then I made a video saying it was a red wave. There was no blue wave.
Yeah.
But then over the next several days to a week or whatever, new votes just started popping in. And then all of a sudden, the races started flipping in favor of Democrats. Trump said that this would happen. And basically, I don't know the exact tweets he put out, but something alluding to, interference, fraud, or whatever. But then when they all won, no one of the Republicans tried to stop it. Nobody filed suit. It just accepted it as, that's what happened. And then, of course, the Democrats with their new House majority tried to impeach the president, and then started doing a whole bunch of, insane stuff. Like Adam Schiff published private details of an American journalist without a warrant.
It's messed up.
He used the subpoena power of Congress, and I guess Judicial Watch challenged them, and they lost. Like the Congress is allowed to seize a private citizen's personal information, phone records, and publish them with no consequence.
That's messed up.
Yep.
Wow.
Take a look at this from the New York Times. They say, Ben Smith writes, I spoke last week to executives, TV hosts, and election analysts across leading American newsrooms, and I was struck by the blithe confidence among some top managers and hosts who generally said they've handled complicated elections before and can do so again. And I was alarmed by the near panic among some of the people paying close attention. The analysts and producers trying and often failing to get answers from state election officials about how and when they will count the ballots and report results. The nerds are freaking out, said Brandon Finnegan, the founder of Decision Desk HQ, which delivers election results to media outlets. I don't think it's penetrated enough in the average viewer's mind that there's not going to be an election night. The usual razzmatazz of a panel sitting around discussing election results, that's dead. So, how many buildings are going to get burned down on November 4th, November 3rd?
I mean, I was just in Philadelphia yesterday, and half of the buildings I was driving down the street, half the buildings were boarded up. They all had, Black Lives Matter stuff written on the outside of the boards, and all I can see is like, man, they're just pleading not to burn their business down. That's all I can see. It's scary. Black Lives Mafia, man. It's actually ringing true more and more the more we go on. It's been hijacked. That's
what I've been saying. They put up signs saying, please don't hurt us.
Yep.
They paint in their windows, we support you, please, please. They put up Antifa signs. I'll tell you what, man, Antifa's out of the question at this point. Antifa is, as far as I'm concerned, the narrative of Antifa is over. You know why?
Why?
What used to be Antifa now just flies Black Lives Matter flags.
Right. That's a good point.
They still have their Antifa flags, but they're wearing shirts that say Black Lives Matter. They put up signs that say Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's the shield.
The shield say Black Lives Matter. So they're no longer Antifa now. Now there is an organization. Congratulations. They like to say Antifa isn't actually an organization. Okay, Black Lives Matter is. They receive funding, and the people running around with shields have Black Lives Matter written on them.
They receive funding and they extort businesses.
That's right. Have any of the, and overtly as Black Lives Matter. Now, here's the important question. Has any of these Black Lives Matter organizers with these massive protests in Portland, Oregon, denounced the explosives being used?
Not that I know of.
Not that I know of. Maybe they did, and if they did, then, thank you. I'm glad, but I don't think they did. So here's what I would say. There's going to be some testimony before Congress about Antifa, and that's wrong. Andy No is going to be testifying, among other people.
Huh?
Wrong. The people in Portland, they can claim to be Antifa. They may have been Antifa in the past, but the 60 nights of violent riots was under the banner of Black Lives Matter.
That's true.
And I'm not saying that to be to agitate or to be emotional. Literally, they have shields that say Black Lives Matter on them.
Yep.
They put bills, like paper, flyers, on the fencing saying Black Lives Matter. It's reported in the press they're protesting for George Floyd and for Black Lives Matter. Then Black Lives Matter has a national organization that raises tons of money. They have high-profile personalities, and have any of them called this out? In fact, when it came to the dude in Louisville who's being extorted, they actually came out attacking the business owner for trying to resist the extortion attempt. Has anyone from the parent organization condemned the extortion going on in Louisville? Not that I've seen.
Yeah.
And that could just be me. It could be the media, to be fair. But not that I've seen. In which case, the conversation needs to be put forth that Black Lives Matter needs to stop the violence, the explosives, the weapons. And there's even NAACP leaders calling this out. In Oregon specifically, there's one guy who was saying that this whole event has become a white spectacle. It was supposed to be about Black Lives Matter, and now they've just taken the whole thing over. Numerous black activist leaders have been saying that the far left has co-opted Black Lives Matter. Now you have overt Marxism and the far left engaging in violence. They're not flying the Antifa flag anymore. So that needs to be pointed out. And if they have a problem with that, then you need to call out the violent extremists who are flying your flag and being extremists. There's no excuse. You got to do it. So the interesting thing that Ben Smith brings up is that the media, for some reason, takes the place of national election commissions. He says here the media actually assembles the results from 50 states, tabulates them, and declares a victor. And we can't really help ourselves. The media establishes the narrative to explain what happened. He then goes on to talk about how this resulted in 2000 with Gore v. Bush and all that stuff. And then he basically brings up the point that they don't know what's going to happen. Many of these people have not woken up to the fact that there's not going to be an election. A lot of the people who work at, say, like CNN and MSNBC and all that seem to think that the companies that provide them data are able and ready, and they're not. So I can only imagine that you're going to see like Wolf Blitzer standing there, and he's going to be like, no data coming in, and we're 5 hours in. Still no data. And then it's like 4 a.m, and it's like 0% across the board. Nothing happens. No election night.
Yep.
So then what do we do as a country?
Oh, I wish I had all the answers. I don't have any of them. Anybody know? Any know what we do?
Buy ranch, buy gold, buy Bitcoin, buy a ranch.
Yeah. Buy a bug out van.
Yeah, get out of cities, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Everyone's getting armed.
That's true.
We got record gun sales.
I wonder. I really wonder about this. I was thinking about, we talk a lot about the potential for war and stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can talk about this in a bit, like in a fuller segment. But I was curious, like, we've got people decentralizing our economy by leaving cities.
Yeah.
We've got people buying weapons, people buying gold, people buying stocks. And interestingly, it's like these things would greatly benefit us in a war. But the other thing I realized too is that with the economy taking a massive hit, I wonder if we're going to reach every enlistment goal for every branch of the armed forces.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not, I could be wrong about this. My understanding is that basically when the economy does bad, enlistment skyrockets because it's a guaranteed job. So I wonder if this will still end up benefiting us as well. There's talks floating around. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. If you want to catch the full show, tune in to this channel, subscribe, hit the like button, or check us out on iTunes and Spotify, and we will soon have this podcast up for free on all podcast platforms. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next episode.